My name is Joel. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at AIDONIC. And today we're talking about the choice model and how technologies like payment aggregation facilitate the choice model. If you don't know what the choice model is in cash assistance, don't worry, we're going to cover that. First, a little bit about myself and AIDONIC. We are a Swiss social enterprise on a mission to improve transparency, efficiency, and impact in humanitarian space. And we do that through technology. We bring together many different technologies to help NGOs and humanitarian actors to deliver on their mission. One thing that is unique about AIDONIC is that we are a blend of different skill sets. First and foremost, we are humanitarians. So I myself have worked all over the world in many different contexts, emergencies and crises, with both humanitarian and development organizations. And I take all of my experience in those contexts and put it into the solutions that we've designed and created. The same is true for Severios, the founder of AIDONIC. And the rest of our team are a blend of software development professionals and finance people. And so that gives us quite a good cross-section of the skills required to solve humanitarian pain points. So what are those pain points? Well, there's many and they're diverse, but I just highlight some on the screen now, such as the lack of digital tools, the lack of payment solutions, and the lack of quality data. Now, these things may differ in your context. Accountability may be something you're very good at, but there might be a new donor that you want to work with, and that donor might demand more accountability from you. And so in this way, we are always looking at how we can push the envelope, how we can improve our accountability, or how we can scale up even bigger. Maybe right now your organization is delivering to hundreds of households, but you want to be able to deliver to thousands of households. That's really why AIDONIC exists. In the past, you would have to have hired more staff in order to increase your scale or in order to improve your accountability. What we want to do is unlock those gains for you using technology. It's important to note that technology doesn't solve all the problems of humanitarian or development pain points, but it can solve some of them. And so therefore, digital transformation using technology is a key important thing for NGOs. So what sort of technologies are we talking about? Well, we use 4 key technologies and each brings a different type of benefit. On the far left, you see blockchain. Blockchain is something that is always associated with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. But the beauty of blockchain is that it can provide transparency and trust in different aspects of the aid value chain, both on the first mile for fundraising and the last mile for aid delivery. The same is true for artificial intelligence. It enables us to identify any kind of irregularities in our operations. So this could be instances of waste, or it could be instances of fraud, both of which we want to eliminate from our work. And of course, many of you are viewing this, are already using, I'm just gonna mute. There we go. So yeah, please mute yourself if you're not already. So many of you are already using data and cloud management, but data and cloud management can mean many different things. So one thing that is very particular to humanitarian aid is the quick scale up and scale down in emergencies. So ensuring that you're using a cloud storage provider that can enable you to quickly scale up cheaply, cost efficiently is key. The second is the security of your cloud infrastructure. So at AIDONIC, we take that very seriously. We use encryption both in storage and at rest. So at no time is data unencrypted. And more importantly, if you make a mistake and you mistakenly delete data that is important to your organization, we can go back at any point in your organization's history since using AIDONIC and restore all of your data. And so that's an important feature for keeping your data safe and secure. And then finally, today, we're going to talk about payments. And we're going to talk especially about payment aggregation. So how does this all affect the aid value chain? So some of you might be working as a donor. Some of you might be working as an INGO or a local NGO, or maybe even you're working as a vendor. It would be amazing if even some of you on this call were a recipient, because all stakeholders in the aid value chain are important to AIDONIC. And we're using technology to highlight cost efficiency and transparency in all of these relationships. And so where we deploy technology is specific to the dynamics of those relationships. And I'm going to show you a very important one today between the recipient and the NGO or the service provider. And that has to do with choice, how a recipient can choose how they receive aid from a service provider. Now, why is that important? Because that transaction at the last mile is crucial to the reporting of that transaction. So here we have all of the different data points that we're collecting. All of those are crucial to the reporting. And so at that last mile, when you're using AIDONIC, you're collecting those data points immutably, which means that it cannot be tampered with. This gives those who have donated to your project greater trust that the data is not only accurate, but it is tamper-proof. And if you're interested in learning how we do that, I would love to show you in another time. Of course, at AIDONIC, we have two solutions. One is targeting the first mile. This is all about fundraising. Today, we're talking mostly about the last mile, which is all about aid delivery. Before I go there, I'm going to touch on a little bit about fundraising so you just have an idea of what we're doing in that space. So we provide different tools in fundraising. Those tools are all designed to help you convert social media followers into reoccurring donors, donors that are giving to your organization on a monthly basis. If you're wondering, why can't my organization seem to attract young donors? Come and talk to us. This is a pain point that we have put a lot of time and attention to. And I can tell you one thing most certainly. Young donors, those below the age of 30 or 40 years old, they are giving a lot to nonprofits and humanitarian organizations. They just might not be giving to your organization. If that's a pain point for your organization, come and talk to us, because there's two reasons why they don't give to you. Number one, they've never heard of you. So you're not reaching them on a channel that they are receiving. Number two, they don't trust you, or they don't your message is not resonating with them, the level of trust. And so what I'm going to do is show you briefly here how you can up your game in terms of fundraising. The first is a tool that allows you to allows the donor to track and trace their donation from the moment they gave it until the moment is redeemed by the recipient. And so this is like a DHL package when you buy something on Amazon. You get an update every time that package is coming to your house. In the same way, the donor can watch their donation and make sure it's going to where they intended it. What's beautiful about this is that at the last mile, that last mile transaction is translated into a proof of impact for that donor. So they receive an NFT telling them exactly what happened with their donation. This is how you improve the trust with young donors. If you click on this QR code here, scan the QR code, you're going to learn a lot about that project. And it's a way for the NGO to establish a new form of communication with the donor. Of course, there's also other tools we can use. For example, enabling them to sort through different projects that they want to support, and then turning the impact from those projects into coupons and discounts at their favorite retailers. So depending on how much money they've generated in impact or how much impact they've generated, they can access different coupons in their country. So this is what motivates them to keep donating and make that recurring donation to your NGO. So that's just a taste of how we integrate first mile fundraising tools to help nonprofits improve their fundraising. Here you can see how it works together with the last mile. You have a donation, it turns into the tracking form, so the donor has a more intimate experience with their donation and fundraising. Then it's redeemed or delivered at the last mile to the recipient. That generates a proof of delivery, which is embedded into an NFT and which unlocks the loyalty for the donor to generate that virtuous circle of recurring donations. And this is really what we're at about. You know, your organization, if you've already got individual fundraising going, you know, you've already have private donors, then you've succeeded at fundraising with a certain demographic. What we want to help you do is unlock a new demographic, particularly those who are new to donations, those who are younger donors. So let's get into now cash delivery. I'm going to ask my colleague Severios to drop into the chat right now a poll, and I'd like you to click on the link and answer this question. For those of you who are involved in cash assistance, or those of you who are working for an organization that are involved in cash assistance, what modality of cash assistance do you deliver most frequently? Now, I've put there 4 options: cash in hand through a remittance office, mobile money through a telecoms operator, bank transfers, obviously through banks, and you can even add crypto and stable coins because those are now part of the mix. Of course, there might be something else that I'm missing here. For example, if your NGO delivers cash in hand via an envelope, that's a bit of an old school way, but if they do that, feel free to put that in there. And let's get some feedback on what you guys are already using and already familiar with. So I'm going to give you a moment to respond to the poll. Good. So if you have responded, I see we have maybe a dozen responses here, over a dozen. So it looks like it's nearly equal between cash in hand and mobile money. Maybe mobile money is the winner here. That's no surprise because it does represent the future. Now, there's something that is kind of lost when we talk about humanitarian cash transfer, and that's the technological element. We think of cash transfer, we don't necessarily associate it with technology, but the truth of the matter is that cash transfers are intimately associated, intimately partnered with technology. So the way we're doing cash transfers now will be different in a year from now. And that's why, even the way we tender in the humanitarian system to tender for financial service providers it's a bit old school because your mobile phone is updating every year. Your apps are updating every month, maybe every week. So just imagine how much cash transfer technology is also updating. And that is really what payment aggregation is all about. It's a new form of cash transfer, and it is inherently technological. So what is it, and how does the choice model relate to it? So first, let's touch on the choice model. The choice model is enabling beneficiaries to select the preferred cash assistance modality that they want or they need. It's their preference. And so you can imagine that you could query through a survey your clients in whatever context that you're working, and you could say, hey, how do you want to receive your cash assistance? Now, some of your clients might be in a city, and there they have telecoms operators. They can use bank accounts. They could go down to the remittance office and they could pick up cash. So they have all of the modalities available to them. Some other of your clients might be in a more rural context where perhaps they don't have connectivity. Perhaps the remittance office is a long ways away. So some modalities may not be available to them. But the point is that what modalities are available to them can be preferred by them. And so you can ask them, how do you want to receive your cash? And they could respond, I want to receive my cash through the bank transfer. Now, you could even go one step further. You could ask your clients, of the money that you will receive, of the total transfer volume that you're going to receive. So let's say it's 100 euros. How much of that 100 euros do you want to receive in which modality? And this could enable your beneficiaries to say, I want 50% cash in hand at the local remittance office. I want 25% in my mobile money, and I want 25% in my bank account. This would allow them maybe to pay bills. This would allow them to effect remittances to other family members. This would allow them greater dignity and choice over how they want to organize their priorities. And this is why the choice model is really about giving beneficiaries improved agency and control over their assistance, which in turn translates into accountability and transparency for the humanitarian system. And that's really what we're about here at AIDONIC. So how does it work? So a payment aggregator is a collection, a digital collection of financial service providers. So it means that within the world of payments, you have at your disposal thousands of FSPs and hundreds of modalities. Now, it depends on which country you're working in, but in our global network, we have over 200 countries and over 1,000 different modalities. So what does this enable? It enables your organization to have one banking relationship. So you do one KYC with a bank and you get access to all of these modalities. This is very new to the humanitarian industry. And what does it do? It dramatically cuts down on the amount of time and resources you need to put into establishing new banking relationships for every modality in every country. Particularly, this is effective in an emergency when you want to begin scaling up your cash transfers as quickly as possible to save lives. So on the screen here, you can see that with your NGO, with the one single KYC, you can access different modalities all over the globe. And I'll give you an example here. Within various countries, you could have both a telecoms and a banking relationship modality, or perhaps several telecoms, so several mobile money operators and several banks. And this is just a screenshot of some of the countries in our network. So what really it affords you is the choice. You get to ask your clients how do they want to receive assistance, and then you get to program that assistance in the modality that they selected. Now, how do you do that? We have created a whole bunch of tools on the AIDONIC platform to enable this. The first and foremost is that you need to be able to survey your clients. And so we've created a tool in the app that enables you to create a custom form, a custom survey, asking whatever questions you want to ask about demographic or biographic, or maybe it's about vulnerability data. So you can create your survey. You can deploy your survey by SMS or by tablet, in person. However you want to collect your data, you can do that. You can even translate the form into multiple languages. The beauty of this is that as the data comes back onto the platform, you don't need to dump it into Excel or into another database. It goes into a safe and secure and encrypted environment right from the start. And so how are you able to deploy that form? The first is that you can do it by SMS. So maybe you first want to start a campaign. So you want to broadcast a message to potential beneficiaries, or perhaps you already have your beneficiary list. So here we've created a tool that you can communicate directly with your beneficiaries using SMS. So we've built the tool for scale. We don't want to just enable you to communicate with a dozen or 100 beneficiaries. We want to enable you to communicate with thousands of clients at a time. And so we've put in various features, such as being able to drop in a keyword like first name, and that first name will then pull from the beneficiary record in order to put the actual first name of the beneficiary. And of course, if you have the transfer volume, or maybe you have a survey, or maybe you have another call to action, you can link to those in the SMS by simply putting in the keywords. Of course, once you send the SMS, you will get a progress report telling you how many SMSs have been received, any SMSs that are still pending. And of course, if an SMS is not received, then you know that you need to follow up because something is wrong with the phone number. And so that gives you an indication that maybe the phone number has changed, or that the client needs to be visited by your team. Then, of course, you've got participant data. You have all of your data. Now you want to create maybe a list of those who are going to receive your cash distribution. We allow you to do that all on the AIDONIC platform. It's a very rich solution that enables you to create new lists, to drag and drop and move around beneficiaries from one list to another list in order to enroll them into new projects and distributions. Of course, you can also create your distribution, and that doesn't only limit you to cash distributions, but also voucher distributions and in-kind distributions. During the distribution creation, you can set the logic of the distribution according to your project. So if you're going to give a certain transfer amount per household or per beneficiary, and then you're going to give more based on vulnerability or based on the household size, you can do that as well. And then, of course, the most important thing is to know how your distribution is unfolding. There are many times where you may have problems in your distribution, but you don't learn about them until you receive the report at the very end from the FSP. This shouldn't be the case. It's 2024. We want to give you real-time updates on who's receiving their cash, when they're receiving their cash, where they receive their cash, how they receive their cash, etc. So we built a tool whereby every single time the cash is distributed, or the voucher is redeemed, or the in-kind commodity is distributed, you receive an update. And so here on the screen, you see an example of what that looks like on your dashboard. So at any moment, you can see which segment of your clients in your distribution are struggling. It may be because maybe they're elderly people and they didn't comprehend the call to action. They didn't understand where they're supposed to go, what they're supposed to do. So you can quickly filter from your distribution list to find out why certain people in your distribution are not able to receive their assistance. And then you can, of course, follow up with them by SMS or follow up with them in person. And of course, at the very end, you can download your reports. This is crucial. If you're a young NGO or a new NGO, and you're struggling to do your due diligent reporting to your donors, this is a great solution for you, because you're going to be able to, in one button, download the entire distribution report, both in aggregate, so a summarized report, as well as a detailed report. So this gives you a complete overview that is donor ready. You can send it off to your institutional donor, the NGO that might have funded you. And this way, you can also back it up with images and signatures that prove the last mile transaction. A few additional features we've created on the platform are really about reducing waste and about ensuring that the data is safe and secure. The first one I'm going to talk about here is deduplication. So we've enabled you to scan through your distribution or your entire client database to make sure that you do not have any duplicates in it. This is something that is eye-opening for AIDONIC's clients, because there's an assumption that there are no duplicates. But we have created an extremely rich and powerful tool that can identify potential duplicates, even those who only have a face. So it could be that you have legitimate duplicates. For example, you have registered in one village and then you've registered in a second village, and there was some crossover of the beneficiaries. But it could also be that you have certain people in those villages that are trying to get, double assistance. And this is what we're trying to prevent. Once you do the scan, it will identify any potential duplicates, even if all of the biographical data is different and it needs to only use the facial recognition. Now, if your NGO doesn't take participant profile images, that's fine. You don't need to use photos. This tool works even with simply biographical data. And of course, let's say that you are in the headquarters, maybe that's in the capital city, and you want to have oversight over the work being done by your colleagues in sub-offices around the region or around your country. For example, in another province. This tool allows you to onboard multiple sub-offices, and therefore you can give real-time oversight to your line managers, to your boss, and you can also have oversight yourself of those sub-offices that you're responsible for. And going one step further, if you are partnering with a local NGO, or perhaps you're working with a consultant, or you're working in a consortium, and you want to share data and maybe give access to certain features and tools on the AIDONIC platform, then you can onboard those colleagues and give them access to only the data and only the tools that they need to do their job. This is extremely important when you're working with sensitive beneficiary data. PII data that contains bank or mobile phone numbers is extremely sensitive, and you don't want to give that data to just anyone. We, in the humanitarian industry, we do this far too much. We send people in our organization links to Excel spreadsheets. Sometimes we even email the entire spreadsheet. And what really troubles me is that most NGOs, they pay thousands and thousands of dollars to keep donor data safe, and yet they don't spend any money to keep beneficiary data safe. This is a huge imbalance. This is something that we need to correct as an industry. So I'm imploring you, if you are someone in charge of beneficiary data, then advocate to your line manager to keep that data safe in a fully encrypted environment 24/7. Now, let's go back to the poll and look at one more question, because I've just walked you through a whole bunch of different features and tools, and I'd like to hear from you. What aspect of humanitarian cash delivery is challenging you the most? I've put a few on there like data collection and management, beneficiary communication, timely reconciliation of transfers, or working with service providers. But I'd love to hear if you have another one, please type it into the chat and let's find out. I'm going to give you just a moment to insert your reply. And if you have another, I'd love for you just to type it into the chat. So it looks like working with financial service providers is the #1 pain point. Yeah, we have to remember that. There is always more than one pain point. Thanks you, Rashid. Now it looks like we have, well, it's still working with financial service providers, but client beneficiary communication and well, yeah, beneficiary communication and service providers. This comes as no surprise to us as well. We are at a critical point in the humanitarian system where we are transitioning from one type of financial service provision into a new type of financial service provision. Many of you are familiar with Bitcoin, with stable coins, with cryptocurrencies. And while many people in the majority of the world are not using these, but when we look at the technology underneath those, like underneath stable coins, this is something very promising. And so here at AIDONIC, we are looking towards that as a future. We, though, have still 1 foot squarely in the present, which is working with the present service providers. And that means cash in hand, that means mobile money, that means maybe even cryptocurrencies as it's becoming more and more. So what we're trying to do at AIDONIC is give a range of options to NGOs so that at any time they can meet people where they're needed most, where the need is most. So I've given you a whole list of different tools on the AIDONIC platform. I went through all of these slide by slide. And then we talked a bit about payment aggregation, how that's changing the humanitarian landscape, how we are increasingly desiring to give greater dignity and trying to improve the humanitarian system by giving greater accountability, by enabling the choice model for humanitarian cash transfer. I hope that it's been enlightening. I hope I've been able to show you how AIDONIC, we're bringing to bear various technologies, including blockchain and AI, in order to leverage payment aggregation and to really unlock the choice modality across the humanitarian landscape. I'm going to stop now and go to some questions and comments. If you have any feedback, any question, I invite you to unmute yourself and speak up. If you're shy, then don't hesitate to put your comment or question into the chat and I will read it out loud. I'm just, yes, please go ahead. Maybe you could start by just introducing us where you're from and what's your name.
Yes, my name is Christian Tanye. I'm calling from Cameroon, that's Central Africa. So my point here is, thank you very much for the presentation. It's quite interesting and responds to really some operational critical needs that we face on the ground, I mean, real needs. My question now is looking at country level governing policies that they may put some bottlenecks in what type of platform we are using and all of these. Are these type of considerations something that you are dealing with in the various countries where you are implementing AIDONIC this far? Thank you. Over.
Yeah, great question, Christian. Thank you for that. Yes, it's a different and varied landscape in terms of government regulation. And that is why we have built the AIDONIC platform using a modular architecture. What that means is that we can unplug different technologies from the platform according to the regulatory environment. A good example of this is blockchain. It's oftentimes confused with cryptocurrencies, but blockchain and cryptocurrencies are totally separate technologies. They share the same use case, but blockchain is not necessarily always a cryptocurrency. So oftentimes, some governments, they confuse blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and they demand that the NGO does not use blockchain. In those circumstances, we can simply turn off the blockchain for you so that when you're using it in your country, you are not running afoul of any regulations. Another example, maybe a bit more of an example that we had recently. In some contexts, for example, in Syria, the Syrian government, on the government-controlled territory, they don't allow the sending of beneficiary data outside of the country. So we're not able to keep the data on servers, on a cloud server outside of Syria. So that presents a problem, that presents a challenge. And what we're able to do then is we're able to use a unique identifier in order to overcome that challenge so that the beneficiary data stays in Syria, but the NGO is still able to use all the features and functions of AIDONIC without sending the data outside the country. So in this way, the AIDONIC platform is extremely agile, and we're able to customize it or adapt it to different regulatory environments or different contexts. Thank you for the question, Christian.
Thank you.
I see a comment from Rashid saying that FSPs are a pain that we learn to deal with, but the data management is very crucial now. This is something, Rashid, that we've heard many, many times, that there's a kind of a disconnect between financial service providers and NGOs. And this can oftentimes be the case that financial service providers don't understand or don't fully comprehend the context of humanitarian cash transfers. So that's why at AIDONIC, we make sure that we solve it using technology. It doesn't solve every single problem, but it solves the majority of those problems. Of course, sometimes you have very, very special use cases. I'm thinking of a use case in Ethiopia, for example, where the service provider doesn't have connectivity. And so in these cases, we can adapt. We can use, for example, the AIDONIC offline app that's available in both Android and iOS. So you can still interact with your service provider using the AIDONIC offline app. But of course, there may be other contexts that we need to adapt to. And so that's why at AIDONIC, we are really the intermediary. We want to provide the bridge for you to the service provider. Now, we have our global network that we work with, but if there's a service provider that you want to work with that we don't have in our global network, then at any time you can suggest it to us. We'll go and reach out to them, build an integration, and onboard them so that you can use them using the AIDONIC platform.
Hey, Joel. I'm jumping in directly. I didn't
Please.
raise my hand and stuff. I just wanted to mention something that is not really, you didn't really map it in the what holds us back. And this is something I faced on a personal level also, and I think with other humanitarians, is that there's a gap of understanding of what is exactly the capacity of data and information management and technology. We are still operating like it's 2010, while there's a lot of features that can be used that will make your life easier, but we are not aware of them. And even when you're aware of them, sometimes our mind cannot really put two things together to understand how beneficial this is. And this is why I've been following you guys for a while, because I really think that what you're proposing is really interesting, and there's a real capacity behind it. And it's a shame that we are not making use of it as much as possible because of this lack of understanding. So I don't know. I mean, I've seen your patience, Joel, in doing these webinars many times, and I really think that there should be a training course that you guys can prepare, like a small workshop or training course for humanitarians to join and learn exactly what they can do with the system, to play around with it, to see what the features are, or I don't know, bring in the information to people indirectly, like, do you need to do this? How about that? What about this? Right? And then also bring the donors to the table so that they would give their impression of the kind of services and the results that you can give with whatever AIDONIC is proposing. And that is way more than they ask for, and they love it. And I've seen it in Ukraine, and we're really producing stuff for the donors, and it's beyond their comprehension. Even the donor cannot really understand all the information that we're providing for him, on which he can build his own strategy. So
Yeah,
just saying, there's a lack of information, lack of training for humanitarian, for practitioners on understanding and the usage of the system. Over.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rashid. I think you hit the nail on the head. Technology and the capabilities that it opens up for humanitarians right now, the capabilities far exceed what we're doing with them. And there's several reasons for that. One, of course, is that humanitarians are very busy. You know, typically, if you're working, I mean, you mentioned that I think you're in Ukraine. I imagine that every day you have a long list of things that you need to overcome in order to fulfill your work there. And so part of that is an education. Like you said, right now, we do these types of webinars for the humanitarian community. Anyone can join. It's worth saying that we also do these types of meetings more one-on-one with individual donors. And it's difficult because at those large donors, whether they're foundations or institutional donors, you have a lot of decision makers that you need to convince. And they might slowly start to understand it, but it takes several months, maybe even years before the organization can adapt and adjust. So we're certainly working on it from our side. Another thing that we're working on is we're trying to create a lot of momentum around local NGOs. Oh, we know that most international NGOs, they can not only afford AIDONIC, but they can also afford the training because they have people who are dedicated to IT, dedicated to cash assistance. That's their primary role. Whereas local NGOs, as you know, many of them, they are wearing many different hats. One day they're doing cash assistance, the next day they're doing WASH. And they just have to take off one hat and put on the other hat, and they get to work because they don't have the budget to be able to hire, you know, all of the different roles that INGOs do. So what we're trying to do is at AIDONIC is create a platform that anyone can use. It should be as easy to use as your mobile phone. And the second thing is we've created it in a way to, how can I say it? It's almost like we want to constrain a little bit the humanitarian so that they don't make crucial mistakes. we don't want to allow you to delete all your data by mistake. So we put little nudges into the platform so that if you're going to make a mistake, you have to really want to delete all your data before it will let you do that. And that way we protect the humanitarians who are using these tools and maybe using them for the first time. A good example is like the cache. When we created the distribution system for cache on the platform, we built it based on best practice published by Kelp and many other cache actors. And that way, even if a local NGO has never delivered cache before, so long as they follow the project management template on the platform, they're gonna follow best practice in cache delivery. And that's one way that we're just building in a usability to the platform that uplifts the entirety of the humanitarian system. So thank you for that. Any final questions before I let us all go? Aftab.
Joel, thank you so much. My name is Aftab and I'm speaking from Pakistan. Joel, the small organization that do not have data protection policies, and donors demand it nowadays. A lot of donors demand that if they have data protection policies, if they don't have that policy with them, and if they use this AIDONIC system, does that justify their donors' requirement, whatever the data protection they demand from beneficiary data management?
Definitely. That is a great question. And most assuredly, if you as an NGO are making an application to an institutional donor and they're asking for your data management policy, we can share with you the entire AIDONIC data management policy. We can also share with you our disaster recovery policy in the event that there is some cataclysmic event that affects your data. So we have all of those policies available for you when you're submitting your grant application. And what's more, we are based in Europe. And so all of your data is held on a server in Europe, which means that it is held GDPR compliant. And this is extremely important. More and more governments around the world are demanding that any PII data held is held compliantly according to a certain standard. And many of those governments are looking towards the European Union in order to craft their own legislation. So if you keep your data with AIDONIC, you can rest assured that it is kept GDPR compliant, and we will even give you a certificate to ensure that that is the case, that you can share with any of your donors.
That's great. Only last question. Sorry to bother you.
No.
What is the process time if any NGO wants to partner with AIDONIC? Do you have any piloting offer, or for certain time period you offer free pilot or something?
Great question. Yeah, the beauty of AIDONIC is that I can train you in how to use it within 2 hours. In fact, I don't think we ever had a training go beyond 2 hours. And so all of the tools I showed you today is so intuitive to use that within 2 hours, you can begin onboarding your participant data and begin creating your distributions. So it's incredibly easy to use. You can start using it the same day that you create your login. And for various NGOs in certain countries right now, we are offering a free pilot project. So if you are serious about improving the way that you run your humanitarian operations, reach out to us. My colleague has put a link in the chat box. Reach out to us and we will get back to you ASAP to set up a one-on-one interview, which we can explore how to use the platform and whether we can qualify you for a pilot project. So thank you for the question, Aftab. And by all means, if you're curious, you have questions, you're not sure if AIDONIC is right for you, don't feel like we're going to pressure you into some kind of purchase. I'm not about that. I'm a humanitarian myself. I wouldn't want to get you into using something that's not going to change the way that you deliver aid. So don't worry. If you have questions, just send them to us, jump in a call, and we'd be happy to answer them. Christian, I think you have another question.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I'm just so excited and enjoying the call because it's quite innovative and smart and responding to real-time needs. My organization is a national, it's a local organization, it's a national organization, but it's actually running a dedicated center to which is affiliated over 200 other national organizations. It's actually called the LUCMEF African Civil Society Development Center. And so what we are doing is basically looking at smart and cost-effective ways of delivering aid. And apart from just delivering aid, we also look at because when we talk about aid, are we talking about just humanitarian response, or we are also talking about developmental type of assistance to local communities? So to me, I will definitely be setting up a one-on-one call for us to be able to explore possibilities of how to get this done, because here in my country, the resources are really, really down now, and requiring that we deploy technology and other smart ways to reduce the overhead costs of operation. And I think I begin to see this as one possible strategy to that. So that was just what I wanted to say. That I was also happy when you cited the fact that you are also targeting local organizations who are actually at the grassroots level of service delivery. Thank you very much.
That's great to hear, Christian. Everyone, right now, in 2024, the humanitarian funding gap is about $40 billion. So that's $40 billion between what people need in humanitarian assistance and what donors are providing. So that's something like 350 million people who are not receiving humanitarian aid. And that's a shame. That's a real shame. Now, I believe, and I think the evidence supports, that there is a solution for this problem in local humanitarian organizations. It's a fact that local NGOs can deliver humanitarian assistance just as effectively, but more cost efficiently than international counterparts. And so I really believe that local NGOs are a huge part of the solution, if not the only part. What they need is better support through training and technology. And so that's really at AIDONIC what we're trying to do, is to collapse, to solve the humanitarian funding gap by empowering local NGOs to scale up their work with international donors. So I'm happy to hear you say that, Christian. I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined the call today. At AIDONIC, we have had a lot of traction over the last year across the world in different emergencies, different crises. But it's always webinars like this where I get to hear back from people like you and present, what we're doing, how we're working on various new solutions. I anticipate that in the coming days, in the coming weeks, we will also have webinars regionally. So we'll have a regional webinar for Sub-Saharan Africa. And in those, for Latin America, for Asia, for the Middle East, and in those regional webinars, we want to hear more from you the participants to understand how the AIDONIC platform could solve pain points that are much more regional or much more specific to contexts that you're working out of. So maybe we'll have one for East Africa, West Africa, etc. And in that way, we can get a bit more specific. So be on the lookout for that. You'll receive an email or see it on LinkedIn. Of course, scan the QR code. You can connect with me by LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to chat with you over there if that's helpful as well. I'm going to close now, but again, thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you for your attention, your patience, and I look forward to hearing from you again in a future webinar. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.